Welcome back to the virtual stage of Procurement and Supply Chain London. Uh, now, pleased to welcome to the virtual stage now Diana Monterrubio. Diana is Global Procurement Director at Teleperformance, which is a company that leads in outsourced omni-channel management. Based in Mexico, Diana is in charge of global procurement and negotiations with businesses across 88 countries. And she has 11 years of experience in business process outsourcing. Diana's presentation is called Are We All Negotiators? So, Diana, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sean, and thank you all for tuning in today. I cannot express what a huge honor it is for me to have been invited to talk to you today. I know there are some great speakers and very successful people amongst our audience, so thank you. Thank you for taking the time to hear me out, and I promise I will try to make this worth your while. If you heard what Sean just said, the title of this talk, you by now know that yes, we will be talking about negotiation. And when I say we, I am actually imagining an audience in front of me. So, yes, we are going to be talking about negotiation. But why? Negotiation is a subject that has both challenged and amazed humankind for decades. But before we get to that, let's talk about something very important: elbows. So, did you guys know that you cannot lick your own elbow? Now, at this point, my imaginary audience has split into two groups: the ones who tried it, realized they couldn't, and the ones that didn't try, either because they already knew they couldn't or because they just didn't think enough of it. But why is this important? It's because of the way our brain responds to the word no. Our nature is actually to take no for not take no for an answer. Our brain is not even prepared to process the word no. So, at the very least, we will try to eliminate all possibilities when we are told no. Believe me, I tried like for 2 hours straight to make sure that I couldn't actually do it. So, yes, it was safe for me to talk about this. And the natural reaction we have to the word no is to challenge it. This is just how our brain will work. And how do we deal with it? What do we do with it? That is the real question. So, during this conversation that I'm having with this audience, we will come to find out that this conversation is not a question, but an answer. Yes, we are all negotiators. How is this? Well, history has great negotiators that have left an immense legacy for our world in big negotiations, but also the small ones, the daily stuff. And I'll bring two examples to the table. Nelson Mandela, for instance, when he was in prison, he convinced the guards to let him wear long pants. Even though colored people were supposed to wear short pants at the moment, he convinced them. He was able to negotiate that. Or we have Emilia Earhart. She was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. She had to negotiate to be even given the chance to do it. And then when she was stranded in Mexico, she had to negotiate how to get help with signs and smiles only because she didn't speak the language. However, she got her way. Now, we got two very different people here. We have different backgrounds, different countries, but both of them have something very similar with all of us here today. They were at some point children. Yes, we were all children at some point. And I don't have any kids of my own, but last summer, my nephew stayed with me and my husband to practice his Spanish. He lives in the United States. So I was his legal guardian. So for big things, big requests, permission, he had to come to me. He had no other choice. And now I'm young and I haven't been doing this for a long time, but I believe I can still hold my own in a negotiation. In fact, I am so sure of it that I think by the end of this conversation, you guys will have agreed with me at least in one thing. But I didn't have that luck with Max. Boy, my nephew took me for a ride every single time. He would try to negotiate bedtimes, activities, food, even when to take a shower. So why would he do that? He would never hear a negative. He would hear an opportunity coming out of my mouth to challenge me and actually get his way. I must have heard the words, well, technically, 1,000 times over those 2 months, I think. So Max wouldn't yield, and he wouldn't be satisfied until he had me right where he needed me. Most of the times, he actually got me to do what he needed me to do. I think that was the first time I've ever said, Fine, don't take a shower." And well, I do hope his parents are not seeing this, but coming to Mexico was the biggest eye opener for me, him coming to Mexico. Kids can not only negotiate, they're great at it. Why? They do not see communication as a conflict. They see it as the means to get what they want, or at the very least, push towards it, get closer to what they actually want. So, what changes with years? What paradigms are brought into our minds that are so huge that we end up fearing the negotiations with even our own selves? What should I wear? Why should I write back in this email? What should I text back? Should I buy that shirt? These are all very valid negotiations. But if we fear the no inside of us, how will we not fear the no in other people, the people that are actually our counterparts when we're negotiating? Because everything ends up being a negotiation. So, yes, we are scared. We have fear. But is fear actually bad? It does keep us safe. And if we think about it, it does give us adrenaline. So when we step out of our comfort zone, it is fear that makes us feel the excitement that can alleviate the idea of having a crappy negotiation. So, yes, fear can be good. Just don't let it dominate your negotiation. Not with yourself, not with anyone else. But don't worry, my friends. I am not here just to talk about elbows and my dear nephew. I want to talk about negotiation instincts, why we fear them, and how to mitigate those fears. I will bring another character into this talk. Why? Well, I am convinced that a good negotiator is a good researcher. It is the best detective. So I will give you an example, another imaginary thing of mine. I imagine a kid coming to his mom asking for a cookie. And the mom says, "No, you cannot have one cookie because you actually already had two. The bag had two cookies and now it's empty." That's a very good research right there. And it's a very simple example, but it does go a long way. So now you already know I like fictional audiences, I like fictional stories, and now I want to bring another fictional character into this talk. Mr. Sherlock Holmes. This amazing fictional creation from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle has changed a lot of the ways we see negotiation and investigation. So now, along with the help of Sherlock Holmes, we are going to investigate what type of negotiators we are. We are going to base this out of Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. He is a very well known FBI negotiator, and he says in his book that neither is better than the other one. They are just different. And when we start to relate to one of them, we will find out what type of negotiator dominates her personality, but we might even be able to learn a few things from the other types. So let's talk about those. First of all, we have the accommodator. Uh, Give me one second. There we are. So the accommodator will try to win people over by giving in to their requests. So he's very relationship focused. They tend to share more information than they should sometimes, but they're often very well liked by their colleagues or their counterparts. So, yes, accommodators actually open doors. Sometimes they will give more information and undermine their own needs, but they care about building the relationship, even if it's for that 1 second. Then we have the analyst. The analyst negotiator is very thorough. This one needs to avoid mistakes. Their strength is that they're methodical, and they're very, very knowledgeable. They have done their research. They care about being heard, and they are not afraid of silence. They will actually use it as time to think things through again. However, they can be so methodical that sometimes they might lack social skills, which can sometimes bring down a negotiation. So, finally, we have the assertive type. The assertive type needs to be heard. They are the type that will dominate the negotiation at every opportunity they get. And if you don't listen to them, they might get upset. For them, silence is just another opportunity to talk. So they're great. They can control the conversation. The thing here is that they might lack the empathy to collaborate with their colleagues or their counterpart. And the lack of empathy in a negotiation with people can also bring down a deal. So let's bear that in mind for a second. And let me ask you, did you find any attitudes of yours here? Well, I think most likely you connected to one of them, but also to all of them on a certain level. Why? Because we do not possess only one way of negotiating. We have all three, but we use them as we seem fit by instinct. And in any negotiation, if we're aware of this, then we can use a mix of all of it to finally end up with an amazing negotiation. What I have come to understand is to always observe the room and observe myself, how I am presenting myself, how I'm acting towards the room. And that will tell me a lot of what type of negotiator I need to be at the moment. That is a good research after all. So, when we actually learn this and we open the negotiation doors, we find ourselves in new places when we can learn that as long as we remain open to the idea of negotiating without being rude but being firm, we will we will be able to state what we want. And this is not a crime. Communication does not equal conflict. It just opens doors to places we never thought we could go. This is as Sherlock Holmes said, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. And with that truth in hand, with those findings, we can always leverage a good negotiation. And if you don't believe this, and if you don't agree with anything that I said right now, at least I'm certain that now you believe that you cannot lick your own elbow. And I told you you would agree with me on something. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you ever so much for that, Diana. Well, I learnt many things from that. One of which is that you can't lick your elbow, which indeed you can't.
Yeah, no, you can't. I tried.
and and also you reminded me how difficult it is to negotiate with children. As I've got two of my own, and I know exactly what you mean on that score. So yeah, so I think children have got a lot to teach us in that sense.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, negotiating is, it's a game of chess, I guess, in many ways, isn't it? It's
Yes.
somebody makes a move and somebody
You
makes
plan
a
2 steps
counter move.
ahead.
Yes, and exactly, planning ahead, and everybody has their strategies. But I'd be interested to know, as a skilled and experienced negotiator yourself, um, what do you do when you've got a strategy and it doesn't quite work out as you want it to? How do you sort of get things back on track, and how do you keep things moving forward in a way that is good for your company?
Oh, well, you're much too kind, first of all, to say about my experience. But what I always find useful is to take a step back. So when I said read the room, it's not just at the beginning of the negotiation. The room keeps on changing, our attitudes keep on changing. But what helps me is if I see that it's not going anywhere, you can always say, okay, we're not going anywhere right now. Let's go back and rethink our strategies. Or if you think you can salvage it, you can always start by listening to the other person talking instead of trying to do the talking yourself. Sometimes finding out, have them talking and finding out what they need will make you a very good detective and will might be able to get you something to latch on and get the negotiation back on track.
So listening is very much as important as talking in a negotiation.
Absolutely,
Would
yes.
would you say, Diana?
Yes.
Um, and when it comes to saying no in a negotiation, putting your foot down, having that line in the sand that you won't go beyond, how do you approach that in a way that still keeps the other party on side?
Right. Well, that's a very good one. And I do believe that we have to be firm in negotiations, but as I just said, our brains do not take no well. It's more of a challenge than a response. So what I do, and I confirmed that in the book that I quoted in the presentation, Never Split the Difference. Instead of saying no, ask a question about no. For instance, I need you to get me a purchase order within the hour. I want to say no, I cannot do that. I mean, not with large negotiations, right? So I would say, how would you expect me to do that? You haven't given me enough time to do so. So empathy comes rushing into the other person. And at that moment, you are being an assertive negotiator. You're standing your ground, but still, you're giving the other person a chance to
Well,
read the room.
so there's a lot of psychology involved here. Does it help if you're a student of psychology and body language and that kind of thing? Is that something that can help a negotiator in general?
Well, it has helped me. I think everyone finds their style. I'm not a psychologist, but I have taken classes. I have taken courses on neurolinguistics and the way we present ourselves. And it, it has helped me. The way a person is sitting, if it's not sitting towards me, then this means they're not fully engaged with what I'm saying. Or sometimes if they're being very strict and straightforward with their answers and just saying yes or no, I would try to summarize what they said to me in order to get a that's right. To get a that's right from your counterpart can get you a long way. And you do have to use these techniques to get to that's right, to agree.
And what would you, in your experience, what would your advice be for somebody who finds that a negotiation isn't going well, it's not going as they expected for whatever reason? How should somebody approach that?
Hmm. Well, read the room and just, I always say that there's 20 things that might drive us apart, right? In any type of negotiation. But find common ground. Finding common ground is usually very good, and it takes the tension and pressure off the conversation. Finding anything, I don't know, do you like the Dodgers? Questions that might get the person to think of something positive that they like, and just carry on with that information.
And we've just been, I'd say we're just about post-pandemic now. I don't know what the situation's like where you are in Mexico, but certainly in the UK where I am, it feels like we're post-pandemic. But what would you say has changed, if anything, between before the pandemic and post-pandemic in terms of procurement negotiations? Has it changed the ground rules at all?
Yes, yes. I think that with the pandemic, everything changed and nothing really didn't change. It's kind of funny. But human people, we as humans, we still need to relate to other people. We are social beings. So doing negotiations by webcam was very awkward at first. We used to travel more, or people would come over, and then it all stopped. And it was just a relationship with a camera, 1 hour, and that's it. When before you would be able to do some small talk and get to know the other person better. So that kind of got cut off a little bit, and it was difficult to manage it. But then now in a post-pandemic world, I think we can do both. We got used to doing both. We are still social people, but we managed to integrate cameras into our normal lives. and made it easier for those remote negotiations to happen.
And what about procurement itself, Diana? How has that changed? How has the pandemic changed that, and the job you have to do when you're negotiating with suppliers and and all the other sort of points of contact you have with suppliers?
Well, I will talk in my experience that negotiations for me, because they include a lot of hardware, I buy technology for a lot of countries in the world. So uh, all of a sudden, there was a lack of everything. There were no computers, there were no webcams, there were no headsets. And then we found ourselves trying to send everyone home, right? Because of the pandemic. So definitely a lack of supplies, logistics changed, ports were closed, nightmares were had. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest challenge was to be able to resolve my work like I would have done before in a whole other world from one day to another. I'm sorry.
And just jumping back for a second to the difference between negotiating with somebody face to face and negotiating with them remotely via Zoom or Meet. Are the skills different? Are they the same? Just interested to know whether remote negotiating is any way different to face negotiating.
I think it has improved because we've gotten used to it, but I would say it's slower. It can take longer to do a remote negotiation than if you are, I don't know, with a vendor for 3 days just to do that negotiation, than if you're just doing it 1 hour here and 1 hour there. It takes longer, but uh, the effects the effects can be the same.
And Teleperformance, the company for which you're global procurement director, Diana, that you're involved in outsourced omni-channel management. I mean, you must be very busy for one thing, because omni-channel has risen, exponentially, hasn't it, over the course of the pandemic, and there must be lots of companies who are moving into this area who weren't previously in omni-channel. So that must make negotiations quite interesting as well, I'd have thought.
Oh yes, as I said, the world changed and it didn't. At the same time, you're still dealing with people, you're still doing your basic stuff, but yes, we're talking OmniLife, we're talking cloud, we're talking call center as a service, things that I don't know, I didn't hear about 5 years ago, to be honest, and now it's my daily activity. So I think we made a time jump. Instead of getting to these conversations in 5 or 6 years, we're there now.
Yeah, and I mean, is your job very different than before the pandemic in terms of, the sheer volume of customers you have who are moving into omni-channel, and what they're expecting from you as a company?
Yes, very different. They expect better technology. Some of them like the strategy of agents staying at home. Some of them like the agents to come back to our sites. Some of them are requesting bigger and fuller technologies, or a more strict VDI strategy, uh, or ways of being able to have the information secured even if they're at home. So cybersecurity has been it's skyrocketed, really. So yes, definitely.
And do you find, Diana, that your the the kind of negotiations you have with customers, does it change depending on which sector their business is working in terms of their omni-channel offering? Would it be different for, say, a retail company as opposed to I don't know, a business to business company?
Well, I don't deal with our clients that much, to be honest. My internal clients are the ones who deal with the clients. So
I see.
that takes the edge a little bit off from me. But yes, they are definitely they're changing their strategies. They're trying to bring in their own technology sometimes, and they request for us to be able to come up with something that will match what they already have or created during the pandemic or experimented on during the pandemic.
I see. And I mean, I've written in the past about artificial intelligence and how it's increasingly being used in contract negotiations. Is that something you've had any experience of?
Well, we are trying to get into that. We're also trying to get in the metaverse, and artificial intelligence is used already in several softwares, even if we don't notice. I mean, it's not the robot that will come to you and talk, but it's there. It does already exist, and it was before the pandemic, but it's come to a point where that's that's a lot of what we're getting asked for. Like, what is your strategy towards artificial intelligence? To whom are you talking to in regards of it? Which is your vendor for this type of artificial intelligence? So we're hearing more about it more than ever. Before it used to be more like a fantasy, something like, oh yeah, it's gonna come, and now it is here. And we are trying to create strategies that will take us towards that in all of our ways of work, whether it's brick and mortar, whether it's cloud campus, or whether it's for staff. So we are creating personas. We are trying to work towards that.
And in your role, Diana, as Global Procurement Director, what do you find is the biggest challenge at the moment?
Supply chain, still a little bit difficult. The lead times for delivery with certain vendors are still very, very long. So supply chain might be one, but also internally forecasting, because the growth has been big and we had issues keeping up with it. So I would say, I know they go together, but yeah, supply chain and forecasting.
And what, if any, impact does that have on a negotiation?
Mm, well, it's a negotiation all and it itself. For instance, if I have a vendor that will say I will deliver these data centers in 13 weeks, that just won't work for my client. We know that. So it's, you have your price negotiation and now you have your delivery negotiation.
Okay, that's great. Well, sadly, Diana, that's all we've got time for now. But thank you ever so much for your presentation. I very much like your deer stalker hat as well. It's always nice to see a few props to liven things up. So thank you very much, Diana. It was really insightful and very entertaining. And good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
And so a big thank you to Diana there. And don't go anywhere because we'll have another presentation soon on a virtual stage here. Thank you very much.